Evening, everybody. Before we get underway, I just want to cover a couple things. Tonight, this data is not my own. This has been shared with me from a member of the Friendly Cosmos Discord. It's a friend of mine that we share data back and forth with and collaborate with from time to time. In any case, he recently got a new scope, an ASCAR 106, and he's been shooting M42. The data that I have is broadband and duo narrowband with an optolong L ultimate filter. I'll be able to HDR the broadband, or excuse me, the narrowband data, but the broadband data, this project for him is in its infancy, and he does not have any data for me to HDR the broadband with. So, in any case, I have looked at the narrowband data, but I have not looked at the broadband data yet. So, hopefully we won't have any issues, but in any case, we will dive right in. Let's get some music going. All right. So hopefully the audio is right on that, and let's get started. So here's the broadband data. Here is the 30-second narrowband data and the 600-second narrowband data. And we'll just look at all of these without a screen transfer function on them, so you can kind of get a look and an idea of how they look without a stretch. So if your data comes out from your camera and it looks like this before it's stretched, that tells you that your core is already going to be blown out. We'll do what we can to recover what we can here, but I can tell you that this being completely clipped out, we may not be able to recover any actual color here or data from this core. On the narrowband data, it's a bit of a different story. You can see the core brighter here, but still recognizable. You can see straight into the trapezium. You got nice 4 stars there. And then on the 30-second, it's perfect. We can do whatever we want with this, stretched as much as we like. So we will do a blend of these two, and we'll start with the broadband data first. So I'm going to minimize these down and send them up here. And let's reapply our STF to this. And when you do that, when you first pull the information into Pixinsight, you always want to look with an unlinked stretch. And I do have some other videos where I talk a lot about linked stretches and unlinked stretches. I'm not going to harp too much on that kind of stuff tonight because I want to get going. There's a lot to do in this process. So if you do find that you're having a hard time keeping up on this one, go back. I have a cone nebula and an M41 that I did where I'm going a little bit slower. In any case, so first thing that we want to do is correct this gradient. So I'm going to try and use multi-scale gradient correction on it. Like I said, I have not touched this data at all yet, so I don't know how well it's going to work. I'm going to flip this around with fast image rotation in a way that I'm used to looking at M42. So like that. And we're also going to need to star align all three of these images because the framing is slightly different. So let's take a look at that first. I'm going to come into star alignment. And I think we'll use the broadband as the reference, but let's just take a look here at all three of them and see which is framed the nicest. Zoom out. Okay. Oops. If you ever double click on this and maximize this window, you can click these two little boxes right here. Fix that problem. That took me a while to figure out. So they're all roughly framed up vertically the same. They just sort of change horizontally. So let's grab the broadband, use that as our reference image. We're going to drag our 30-second over into the target image, as well as our 600-second. And we're going to align. Alright, let's see how these framed up. Yep, just slightly different. And it looks like this one, the 30-second, has the most we're going to have to crop out of it. So I'm going to take these non-registered files and close them because we don't need them now. And then we're going to open up a dynamic crop window. So dynamic crop. And we're actually going to crop this 30-second star-aligned image down. And then we're going to apply that exact same crop to the other two images. And since they're already star-aligned, we know that they're going to fit together nicely. Just make some fine adjustments here. Get as much as we can. So I'm going to drag my little arrow over to the 600. And we're going to drag our little arrow over to the broadband. And we should have, ideally. Oh, and don't forget to crop the one that you started with. So we'll crop that one too. Ideally, these should all be star aligned now, so we'll just drag over and check our transparency. Neat little trick in PI, you can always click down and see what's underneath it. Yeah, everything aligns. Excuse me. Alright, so now we're going to put those away. And we need to plate solve this image now. So let's get our astrometric solution. And the data that is in here is already correct. I happen to just know that is M42. And that is the focal length of his telescope. So. Hey, Nick. Yeah, that's all I've done. How do things sound tonight? I was a little worried about the audio being balanced correctly. I got a feeling I'm going to have to get some headphones so I can monitor what I'm actually hearing. Okay, so we got our image solved, and the first thing we need to do before running MGC is to do a flux calibration. So our friend Nick here uses a 2600, so that's going to be this sensor, and this was shot with an IR UV cut filter. So we'll drag that over. The only bad way about doing it this way is I can't hear my own music. Okay, so we got our calibration in. Now we're going to open up the multi-scale gradient removal tool. And we'll just start with the default settings and go from there. Keep in mind that almost all these process buttons that I have over here on the right, you can find under the process, all processes here at the top. I have also downloaded my icon set on the M41 video that I created. So if you would like to get these process icons for yourself in your own processes, you can download them in the description there. Okay, so just taking an initial look here. It's not bad, but we've lost a little bit of core brightness and color, so this is probably not going to be the one that we go with, but let's take a look at how it did with this gradient. And once you're done applying MGC, you'll want to hit the little nuclear button again and just see how well it did with your gradient. Nick, is this... No, of course it isn't, because your focal length is totally different. Dude, you have that same plane in the exact same spot as the last time you shot this. That is wild. Alright. So, let's go back and change this a little bit. I think the gradient scale is correct, but I am going to change the scale factor slightly and just see if we can maintain our core. It's a little better. I think it may have been actually slight too much, so we're just going to go back down one more time. You going to the Super Bowl, man? Cool. Let me just check and see if this is any better, but I think we're definitely in the neighborhood. Yeah, so we're going to go with that. You'll see that the gradient from left to right is gone. I would say that's pretty close. Hey man, you had playoff tickets, so good for you. I never know. Okay. Next up is I'm going to run Blur Exterminator in correct only mode and just get rid of any weirdness on these stars. However, when I ran this on the narrowband data, it literally did nothing because these stars are pretty darn good. Yeah, I gotta. What day is the game? Because I want to watch it here, but God knows how late it's gonna be on. I mean, as you should be. Especially when you got data as nice as this. You only want to take the best. Alright, so I really don't think that did a thing. Oh, it did. Just brought the stars in slightly. Alright, so that's good. Next step is SETI Astros. Find background. And I always change this down to 25. Filter out objects. And search. And we're going to find a neutral part of this image that doesn't really contain any nebulosity. Definitely no stars. And we're going to use that neutral space as our background reference when we do our color calibration. So here we go. Drag this over and change our sensor and apply our color calibration. Sunday at 6:30. Okay. So that's like 11:30-ish or something. After you've applied your color calibration, you'll want to use a linked stretch to look at the image. And that looks pretty darn accurate. I'm pretty happy with that. Color looks good. Everything looks as M42 should in broadband light, which would be, if your eye was capable of gathering this much light in one go, this is what you would see with your eyeball. Alright, so now we've done our color calibration. We're going to calculate the PSF, which is basically how the light is scattered across the image and the pixels. And we're going to use this to deconvolute the image and sharpen it up. I like to use around 1200 stars. You can always adjust that via the sensitivity here. And there's probably actually not 1200 stars in this image. So you want to make sure that you're not actually using pixels. So I'm going to go with 600. We'll see how that goes. It will actually identify information that is not actually stars if you don't set this sensitivity correctly. At your higher focal lengths, you obviously are going to have less stars to work with. So just be aware of that when you are setting the sensitivity. Do have the scope running tonight. Shooting some M81. Wanted to do M45, but alas, the moon is too close. Okay, so opening up our calculator. I take our average of these two metrics. And that will give us our PSF. Whoops. Some bad math there. .4. They look good. I had to change from 900 seconds. It was too bright, but other than that, everything's looking good. What did I say? 3.4? Yeah. Let's see how this looks. I had to go through and mute a couple sections of my M41 broadcast today. I figured classical music would be fine since, you know, it's super old. But I guess it sort of depends on how recent the recording was. It's amazing to me that it knows. Alright, let's see how... Yeah, we got some nice sharpening here. Beautiful. Okay, so next, now that we have sharpened, we are going to take out the stars. And I'm going to use Star Exterminator for that, or at least we're going to try that first. Let's see how it looks. Yeah, of course they got to get their money. Dude, Bach and Beethoven's family want their cut. Thank you. Okay. Let's see here. That worked so well. Don't really think we lost. Lost a little bit. Little bit. I'm gonna run StarNet on this Star Exterminated stars and see if we can put that back. I'm not too optimistic, but we're gonna try it anyways. Sure, it works for me. Didn't really leave behind this small star artifact here, but I'm actually going to try and go with this. So I subtracted the stars from the stars that I subtracted, and I was left with this residual nebulosity here that Star Exterminator actually pulled out. Hoping one day they fix that. In any case, I'm going to open up Pixel Math and add it back. So I'm going to go with broadband plus broadband stars. I'm just going to add that back in. And the reason I did that is inevitably I'm going to stretch the stars and the starless differently. And there's always the chance that when you stretch the stars, if it's at a different stretch intensity, when you put it back in, it sticks out like a sore thumb because it's of a different intensity than the starless image. So any mistakes or artifacts that you have in the stars when you go and put them back in, those show up. So I prefer not to have that stuff in there. I want my stars to just be stars. So I'm done with stars for now. I'll put those over here. And we're going to do Noise Exterminator. And let's take a look at our color noise. Got some typical bits there. Selecting my newest version of NXT. And color denoise at 90% and everything else at default. Let's change these iterations up to max. This does take a little bit longer, so if you want to go and grab a drink, you probably got 2 minutes or whatever. I am going to have a drink myself. Yeah, you didn't know? It's pretty slick. You don't have to use MMT anymore for color noise because NXT does it. And it does a pretty darn good job. Apparently there's a video out there with RC Astro and Adam Block using the tool, and I need to watch it so I actually know what I'm doing. I sort of just took it out of the box and used it. It's quite a tool, MMT. It's one easy to get lost in. And to be fair, I don't fully understand it. I know it well enough to do what I needed to do, but I only did that by monkey see, monkey do. I saw somebody else do it, and I was like, well, I'll just try that, and it pretty much worked. Okay, so there is our after, and there is our before. It's a nice, clean, color noise free image. So now we are ready to, actually we're not ready to stretch because I need to get ready to do a continuum subtraction. So I'll explain all of that later. But for right now, I am going to extract my 3 color channels. So there's a button right here, split RGB channels. I'm going to do that. I'm going to get my red, my green, and my blue. And for what we're going to be doing, we do not need the green and we do not need the blue, but we do need the red. In fact, I'm going to do it right now. So what we need to do, I'm going to minimize this, is sorry guys, small brain fart because this is super complicated. As I think through my brain on how best to do this. So what we need to do is we need to isolate what is actual hydrogen alpha, or HA, from the narrowband data, from the broadband data. And then we need to extract that information so that we can input the narrowband data. The tricky part here is that we actually have two different exposure times or integration links for the narrowband data. So what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to do an HDR combination of these two. And then we're going to use this red channel to separate that information from the red information that is in the broadband data. And boy, I hope I explained that clearly enough. So I'm going to minimize that for now as well. And I'm going to save these two files. Before I do that, I'm actually going to plate solve these two as well. So, full disclaimer, this process is not my own. And there is a script that you can use for doing continuum subtraction. And it works pretty darn good. I have found myself that doing it manually is nice to be able to know how to do. So I'm going to attempt to show that on stream tonight. But there is a incredibly smart dude named Charles Hagan, and he runs a astrophotography website called Night Photons. And here is his photometric continuum subtraction script. And the guy is literally a genius when it comes to understanding pixel math and astrophotography science and the science of light and how to get accurate representations out of your astrophotography images. In any case, so what I'm going to do is I saved those two files, and I'm going to open up here. Unfortunately, this process, this HDR composition process that I'm going to use, only works off from a saved file. You can't do it off something that's on your screen, so that's why I saved those. And where did I save them? Oh, I didn't save them yet. That's right. There we go. Okay. You can tinker with these settings if you want. Basically, I never change anything when I'm doing an HDR composition. The default settings work fine. I will say there are some videos out there. Visible Dark has a good one on doing HDR compositions that I've watched his video, and he kind of talks about mass smoothness and mass growth. Also, don't forget that Pixinsight is very good about giving you tooltips about what the tools do. So don't be afraid to use those. Educate yourself a bit and play with the settings. In any case, I have them loaded. The order of these is important and does matter. Typically, you want your shorter exposures at the top and have them go in ascending order. I'm not going to generate a 64-bit HDR image just because the file is massive. And it is going to give us our output here. And it's going to show us what our mask was. So obviously the core was the brightest. It masked that, and then it blended the two into an HDR image. You need to look at this with an unlinked stretch. So this is the data from these two images blended into one HDR image. So we will minimize these again because we're done with those. And now we have one image that includes our 600-second subs and our 30-second subs. So the next thing that we're going to do with this HDR image is it also has a gradient. So we need to correct that. Now, the multi-scale gradient tool is actually not set up yet to handle data from duo narrowband filters. So the Mars survey, the All Sky Reference survey, has been set up with a large portion of the sky from the northern hemisphere in RGB and HA. But that was done with a monocam, and this is one shot color with a duo narrowband filter. So I'm actually going to take out correction. I'm going to do a flux calibration first. Actually, no. I'm going to split this off. RGB. And I'm going to treat the R channel like it was taken with an HA filter. and we're going to see if this works. So I'm going to take the stars out. Nope, I can't do that yet. I need to do my flux calibration, actually. Sorry guys, a lot of moving parts on this one. So flux calibration, narrowband filters mode. This was taken with a 3 nanometer duo narrowband filter. Like I said, we're going to pretend it is a 3 nanometer HA filter. And I'm going to apply that. I need to plate solve it. Okay. And now we're going to try and do a gradient correction on this mono red channel from a duo narrowband filter. So we're going to open up MGC again, and we're going to change this gray filter to HA. And we'll just apply the default and see what it looks like. Really? Alright, do the flux calibration again. Okay, now we're good. Okay, so let's take a look at our gradient model. And that was very aggressive. It's overcorrected in here. These areas are too dark. And you can see that. So let's go up on the scale and try it again. That looks better already. Let's take a look at the before and after. So I'm going to go with that. And at this point, I'm going to go do all the normal things that I did before. I'm going to run blur exterminator and correct only. And then we're going to calculate the PSF on this. And these tiny stars, let's see what we get here. How many star samples we can get. That's way too many. Yeah, I just don't feel like there's 1100 stars here to actually... There's no way that's correct. Just try and use roughly the same amount of stars that I used for on the RGB. There we go. Looks like this is going to take a minute, y'all. Yeah, well, it's definitely taking forever while I'm streaming. So, yeah, it just is what it is. I wish there was a pause stream button. I don't want to stop stream. I just want to pause stream. Yeah, this is about as long as I've seen it take on stream too. I was doing M41 the other night and it didn't take anywhere near this long. So, I don't know if it actually... Well, I know it does have to do with the data and the file size and the fidelity of the data, so I'm sure all that goes into how long it takes. Because, you know, if you're working with your color data, it always takes longer than it does with something that's mono. So I assume it just has to do with the amount of information that it's got to sort through when it's doing it. You know what? I'm going to cancel it. This is taking way too long. So for this, we're just going to use the automatic PSF function. It's not ideal, but it's good enough to show the process. So we'll run that. One day I'll have a great big monster PC that'll be able to do all this. No problem. Okay. And we're going to remove stars. Hopefully it doesn't take a big chunk of M42 with it, but we'll find out here in just a second. Yep, it did. See if StarNet's any better. Yeah. Dude, Apple's are super good for image processing. I mean, it's kind of their thing, right? You would hope they were fast and good at it. Yeah, StarNet did way better than Star Exterminator. So you don't really need the HA stars for anything, so I'm going to close those, drag that way over here so I never see it again. So we have our red channel from our narrowband data, and we have our red channel from our broadband data. We're going to combine these two using channel combination. And this is all going to sound really weird, but trust me, this is how this works. So we're going to take the essentially what is the hydrogen alpha and put it in the red, and then we're going to take the red from the broadband and add this in the green and the blue, and we're going to combine those two, and this is going to create what is called, or what we are going to call, HRR, hydrogen red red. And then we're going to auto stretch it. So you're looking at an image that has the HA identified here in red, and then the red from the broadband channel is identified in blue and green. So from this image, we're going to find background again. Filter out objects, change to 25, search. I like using my wife's computer to process too. It's way better than mine. Alright, so we have our background for this, and we're going to do a standard color calibration now. So I have that button right here. And you'll notice that I have my HRR background already selected. And changes you want to make to the color calibration tool. In fact, I'm going to just open this and start from scratch. I'm not going to use my button so I can show you. So these are the default settings. You want your reference image for background to be HRR background. You want to turn off structure detection, and you want to max out the upper limit on both the white reference and the background reference, and then apply that color calibration. It's going to give you this super red looking image. Click your link button and then apply your STF again. Okay. So this is gonna, we're trying to get to a place to where all we have is the HA and the red from the broadband signal subtracted from it, so that you have a pure signal. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna use this pixel math, and again, I strongly recommend you go download my icon set, but I will. This is the pixel math that it uses to do the continuum subtraction. So we're going to apply that. And it's going to create a new image that does this. Now all these images that are, or excuse me, all this data that is in black here, we need to set a white reference in these black areas so that we get a better continuum subtraction. Because right now we haven't accounted for that. So the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to create a preview box in one of these black areas, and these indicate that there is no HA signal in that area. And I'm going to take that preview and I'm going to drag it onto my HRR image, and we're going to do the color calibration again. So we don't need to change anything other than to select our white reference, which we just picked, and that is preview 1. And we're going to apply it again. And you can close that first subtraction you did because you don't need it. You're only using that for the preview. So after you've applied your color calibration, it may look like you did not have a change, but go ahead and apply the continuum subtraction pixel math again. And we're going to continue to refine this until ideally we don't really have much of these black spaces anymore. So I'm going to pick something that I know is where this star is. And I'm going to apply another preview because I'm pretty sure there's no HA signal there as well. Drag that over to our HRR. And we're going to update our white reference again. And we just keep doing this until we get an image that looks correct. And it's pretty rare when you get this right on the first try. You're going to have to just keep doing it and making your samples in these black areas and updating your color calibration until what you have that is subtracted is all of your HA. That's getting pretty close. So let's just check over here and see if there's anything we can do to make this a little bit better. Yep, that's about as good as it gets. You can go through and place a sample there on this. What is this star? Don't bother. You're not going to get too much better than this. So this is the HA subtracted, and we're just going to name this NB because this is our narrowband. And we're done with the HRR image now. We can put that away. And we're done with this broadband red. And we're done with this HDR red. Okay, so there's our NB. We're going to set that aside. We're going to go back to our broadband now, because we were all set and ready to stretch. So that is where we're going now. So I'm going to open up GHS. What song? 857. I don't know. I missed it. I can go back. The music that I'm using is just music from YouTube's fair use library. I'll have to go back on stream and figure out what it was. Man, I need to look at chat better. So I'm going to select a background space over here. I'm going to set a symmetry point. You can see this little yellow line showing up when you click. You see it moving around there. I just click over here somewhere in the background and send a symmetry point. Remove your STF and you're gonna stretch. Sorry, core, I can't save you. But I'll do my best. So we're gonna change our stretch intensity. We're gonna try something insane like 8. Nope, it's a dead core for sure. But we will still do our best. And I'm gonna adjust that stretch intensity back down now until I see that core start to really blow out again. So it's sort of a, hey, we're gonna just do our best here. And I think stretch intensity of 5. We'll look at 4 and see if it's really any different. And typically on your stretch intensity, you don't want to go as high as 8. You want to do as little as possible, to be honest. Otherwise, you start to lose some contrast in your image. So it's a do as much as necessary, but less is more is better kind of deal. So yeah, I think 4 was about as good as it gets. And then you can just stretch up here to this 1/3 of your histogram a little further. And we're going to apply that. And then reset your tool. Going to change to log view on the histogram. And we see all this space that we can use to reset our black point. So we're going to, from the drop down, select linear, zoom into our histogram a little bit. I'm going to set our black point just to the left of where it's going to clip that data. Send a black point and apply. And then zoom back out of our histogram. So right now this histo is nicely filled out here. Can probably do a little bit more, but if we keep stretching too much further, we're just going to start clipping high-end colors and whatnot, oversaturating. So we'll just take a quick peek here and see what happens if we stretch any further. I think things are just going to get even more out of hand in that core as well. Yeah. So normally at this point I would do an arc sign stretch, but as I pointed out, this is already pretty filled out. There's not really too much more we can stretch. And our core is already so bright. Pretty much anything we do to this image is gonna overcook it. But for the sake of just showing you, you open it up, estimate your black point, drag this down until all this color information disappears off your screen. Take a look at a dark area, see these little dots, it's more of that. And again, you're just sort of resetting that black point again. and getting a bit more stretch. So there's a before, there's an after, and I'm not going to apply it because I actually think this looks better. So I'm going to save this off, and I'm going to go over to Photoshop real quick. And for my taste and the way I like my processes, I like things a little less noisy. And I'm going to run this through camera raw filter, and I'm going to apply a small clarity adjustment, and then I might run it through Topaz, but it's already a pretty noise-free image. We're going to take a look. Yeah, it just makes it pop a bit more. Normally I would be worried that I'm going to blow out my core doing this, but I don't really think it's going to get any worse. So we're just going to get rid of this small amount of clipping that we do have. Subtle change, but I like it. And let's see if we can do any Topaz on this without screwing it up. Topaz, really powerful tool, but not designed for astrophotography. And it will add details in your image that don't really exist if you don't use the tool correctly. So for instance, I have this on the severe noise setting because that is the least aggressive one that I have found, but I have this sharpness slider on max, and you'll see that this is way over sharpened, and that's not legit at all. So I always turn this enhanced sharpness to 0. And inevitably it is going to give you some sharpening. That is what the tool does. But unless you are a super pixel peeper, you probably aren't going to notice it. And it is going to just clean up some of your noise a smidgen. I'm going to look over here and see how much effect it's actually having on this noise, because if it isn't doing much, we won't use it. It's a very small amount. Two seconds, guys. Okay, save this back. And go back to PI. You'll notice since we cleaned up some of the noise, there's a little more room to reset the black point here in the end, and it's because what we cleaned up was noise. So that data is no longer part of the histogram, it was noise. So I'm going to set that again to linear, reset the black point. And put potentially stretch just a tiny bit, a smidgen more. That's still too much, like a tiny bit. Okay. The last thing that we can do to try and get some of this core back is run a tool called color corrected HDMRT. And it's good for areas that are overexposed, but at the end of the day, this cannot recover information that is clipped. If it's clipped, the data's gone. It's not there, or it was never there to begin with, I should say. But I'm going to run it just for laughs and see what it gets us. Yeah. See, it's doing its best to recover this, but it's a guess, I would say. There's no way you're going to recover that. So it's a matter of finding the setting that doesn't make your image look dreadful, and still give you back something around the core, maybe not the core itself. And I'm not positive which setting is going to be right, so I'm just going to tinker around with it for a second. It's pretty close. This core is still a funny color now, though. And go up to 9 on the layers and see if it's going to be pretty close. Yeah, just gives us a small amount of contrast back in the core, and eventually we'll have some shorter exposures of this core, just like we do with the narrowband data. And like we did with the narrowband data, we will be able to create an HDR, and we'll be able to see into the core when we're done. Okay, so now we're ready to take this narrowband data and include it into this broadband data. And the way you do that is you need to stretch this image first. Remember, that's in a linear state. So we're going to open up GHS again, open our preview, and just like with the broadband data, we're going to, I can't wait to get it. I think this is going to be really nice when it's done. We're going to stretch this, and we're going to try and maintain fidelity in this core. And we know we can because it was HDR'd. So we're going to tinker around with some settings here. See how nice it is all the way into the core. There's just amazing detail there the whole way through. So I think around 1.5 looks nice. And we'll stretch. And keep in mind, guys, you do not have to do this stretch all at once. So baby steps are good. Go to there. And we'll set our stretch intensity out here again. Send SP. Stretch again. And we just want to keep this core under control the whole time. It's tough to do on this though, it really is. It'll get away from you on a big hurry. It's already getting out of hand. I'm going to use the HDR multi-scale transform, and I'm going to try and compress this signal a bit here, so I might be able to stretch it a bit easier. Too much. I think 7 was about right. And we've got all this really nice HA stuff that's on the outside here that we want to get, which is what I'm going for here. Starting to get it. And I'm setting my symmetry point now further out that I can start to see some of this data that's on the outer areas, and I'm going to stretch these areas as opposed to focusing on the center. Yes, this is just the continuum subtracted HA data at this point. Helps if I open the preview. So the one thing to remember is, and I just reminded myself of this core is completely blown out in the broadband image anyways. So being as fussy as I am about trying to salvage this information, is not really going to matter anyways, because when I add it in, it's going to be completely covered up. But on your own process, or when we do have an HDR of the broadband data, this will be important to do correctly. So I'm not going to sit here and beat a dead horse on this anymore, but we're getting a nice full histogram here again, and we have our NB data. The last thing that we want to do here is we don't need all of this background information. We still want all these HA filaments and striations, but any of this background stuff is going to show up when we add in the HA information. So I actually want to clip that. So I'm going to open up a histogram transformation, and I'm just going to look at a preview over in here. We're just going to drag this little arrow over until we start to clip out that information, while we still keep that nice faint stuff. Something like that. And then maybe clean it up with some noise exterminator real quick. Okay, so now we're ready to add in the subtracted information. There is this addition button, and again I'll click through these tabs so you can look at the pixel math. There's the red, the green, the blue, and this symbols page. On the symbols page, you can adjust the values of what you're adding in. So for this, red is added in at a factor of 1, green is 0, and blue, I'm going to also make that 0 because I'm just adding in red. If you were, though, adding in S2 or HA or O3, you would need to adjust these values and turn these off. So for O3, you would make this 0, you would make this 1 in any case. The last thing you'll need to do is make sure that your the file that you're adding in is named correctly. In this case, this file is named NB. This is the name of the file that we're adding in, NB, NB, NB. Alright, so we're just going to drag that over and look and see how it looks. So, pretty good. As we already knew, the core would be cooked. That's fine. No shock there. Our background is quite red, and that is because we had this information added in. We can counter that one final time here by doing a find background, and we're going to just do a background neutralization in there and see if we can tone some of that red down real quick. Don't want to do too much though, or you'll just undo everything that you added. So let's just see what we got. You may need to tinker with that MB image a bit and clip it a little bit more so you don't get quite so much of that into your background, but we'll see here what happens. Yeah, I think that's fine. It's not quite as loud as it was. We have some really nice HA stripes here in the Running Man. And our last bit will be putting our stars back. So we have RGB stars, thanks to our broadband data. And I'm going to use Steady Astro's Star Stretch. Nope, not that one. Let's take a look at how they look. Those are pretty big and fat. I'm gonna do slightly less. Let's try that and see how it looks. And remove your STF. Let's rename our stars image to stars_1 so that we can rescreen them. And we're going to use our pixel math here to add our stars back. Those are still pretty darn big. So there is a script that we can run for star reduction. Or you can go back and change your stretch. Both are good options. Before I do that, I want to look at the color of these stars. Yeah, they all look pretty nice. I think if you went in here and you started to saturate these stars, you would just be getting noise, a bunch of color noise. So I think these all look really nice. So go back to our star reduction. And I'm going to initialize the small star protection, because we have very few stars as it is. I want to keep the ones that we got. And I'm going to go with a strong reduction. Let's take a look and see what we get here. Of course, that's not going to play nicely for me. Well, that's rather strange. That totally did not work correctly. I'm going to generate a new starless view. See you, Nick. Thanks for stopping by, man. this is pretty much the home stretch, folks. Normally I would go through and I might do some color work in M42. Maybe make these magenta areas here slightly bluer. That's just my taste. But like most things, you do what you want to do, how you like the image to look. Ultimately, the majority of us do this for fun. We like to make pretty pictures, so do what makes it pretty for yourself. Boy, this star removal is taking a minute. Guys, I'm going to get up real quick for a bio break while this is running, and I will be right back. Okay, I'm back. Almost there. In retrospect, I probably should have just used StarNet, which is way faster. And I shouldn't have enabled this large overlap, which does take a lot longer on Star Exterminator. Okay. Yeah, that's good. I'm gonna apply that. There is our after and our before. I think that's just about it, gang. Let's take a nice big look at this. Hopefully, Nick was saying on the next new moon, we will get some shorter exposures on this broadband data so we can see into this core and catch the trapezium. It should look like this. We get these nice 4 stars in there, and that's always a good measure of how well your M42 image is exposed. It's real tough to do. M42 is easy to find in the night sky, but it is abundantly hard to process because of the dynamic range. So, a couple things we learned tonight: doing HDR composition and doing continuum subtraction. And the next time I process this data, we're going to go and use this photometric continuum subtraction script from Mr. Charles Hagen over at Night Photons. He has a very, very detailed explanation of if you're the kind of person that likes to understand what's going on under the hood and how it works. He explains it in great detail on his website at nightphotons.com. There's also a lot of other really great information and resources on his site. I would highly recommend you check that out. So that's about it, gang. I'm going to wrap up for the night. I appreciate you watching. We're going to stop our music, and I will see you guys on the next stream. Hopefully we'll be getting on tomorrow night. Not sure exactly what we're going to process, but like, comment, follow, and subscribe, gang. Thanks a lot.